Hello, everyone, wherever you may be, and welcome to Coalition Conversations, brought to you by the Coalition of Community College Architectural Programs. This broadcast is based on the conference held in June 2024, What We Teach, How They Learn. The conference was sponsored and held at Montgomery College at their Silver Spring, Maryland campus, and was also sponsored by the National Council of Architectural Registration Boards and the American Institute of Architects. Today we bring you a spectacular guest, Jeffery J. Roberson, an assistant professor in the Department of Architecture and Interior Design at Anne Arundel Community College. He holds a Master of Design Studies in the History and Philosophy of Design from Harvard University, along with a Master's and Bachelor's in Architecture from the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. He is also the co-founder of OFFICE ONTIC, a Brooklyn-based architectural design practice rooted in the Rationalist tradition. Jeff's research focuses on two primary ideas: the relationship between form and representation, and the relationship between form and ideas. Through his teaching, practice, and scholarship, he explores the sources of architectural form, aiming to unveil reality beyond appearance and reflecting a commitment to the radical emancipatory potential of architecture through the liberal arts framework. Before joining AACC, Jeff taught at various institutions, including the City College of New York, Parsons School of Design, Kean University, Mississippi State University, and the Catholic University of America. He has led numerous workshops for high school students and underserved minority youth interested in architecture. Please help me welcome Jeffery J. Roberson.
Hello, my name is Jeff Roberson. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Architecture and Interior Design at Anne Arundel Community College in Arnold, Maryland. And I've been invited today to deliver a brief presentation on the what and the how we approach the teaching and learning of computer knowledge. Sorry, I'm going to start over, Manuel, just because I don't know why my computer function was getting jammed up here. So sorry.
Okay. No problem. Go ahead. Take two.
Yeah. Okay. So hello, my name is Jeff Roberson. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Architecture and Interior Design at Anne Arundel Community College in Arnold, Maryland. And I've been invited today to deliver a brief presentation on the what and the how we approach the teaching and learning of computer knowledge. So before I launch in, I want to briefly define our terms. And so by computer, I simply mean the digital tools and techniques that we engage students with in the classroom. And by knowledge, I assume the double meaning of the term as both techne, or know-how, and episteme, or know why. So when we are talking about computer knowledge, we will be concerned with addressing not just the know-how or the practice of digital tools and techniques, but also the know why, or the theory of digital tools and techniques. But I want to pause for a moment before we move forward. So does anyone recognize this date, November 30th, 2022? Yes, it's the day that OpenAI released ChatGPT to the public. And it was a watershed moment, a historical event to be sure. And I would argue that it would not be hyperbolic to state that there is life before and after ChatGPT. So what is ChatGPT? ChatGPT, as I'm sure you all are very familiar, is an AI chatbot that utilizes machine learning techniques, and it is shockingly very human-like when engaged in dialogue. And what makes this AI so powerful is the actual GPT in ChatGPT, and this stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer Model. And in the simplest terms, this essentially means that ChatGPT is a model that is generative or can generate coherent text from pre-training, and that this pre-training has to do with analyzing the grammar, facts, and context of large data sets, and then it transforms this data into specific responses to specific requests. And the results are astonishing. And for anyone who has engaged with ChatGPT, what becomes suddenly apparent is that we are on the verge of a technological revolution. And I would argue that this technological revolution is not unlike the Industrial Revolution of the 18th or 19th centuries, or the Information Revolution of the 20th century, or even the Digital Revolution of the late 20th and early 21st centuries. And what we know from these previous revolutions is that quite literally everything will be turned on its head. And I think by pausing here, I think what's so alarming or astonishing is how this event has already become kind of co-signed to history, and somewhat normalized in the present. If you all remember the days and weeks that immediately followed the release of ChatGPT, every conversation in the media was about a dystopian future or a kind of non-future with artificial intelligence. So on the one hand, there were narratives about AI getting into the hands of bad actors, and that we could expect a world of increased misinformation, as well as the democratization of more advanced weapons. There were also assertions that we would be replaced by a superintelligence grounded in a purely self-preserving evolutionary logic, which would reason that humans are a threat to evolutionary optimization. And then there were others that were arguing that AI would eventually replace the majority of the workforce, making most jobs obsolete. And in response to these possible existential threats posed by AI, there were a number of AI researchers, tech industry leaders, and public figures who released a number of open letters calling out the risk associated with AI. And for the purposes of this presentation, it's worth calling attention to one of these letters. This is an open letter that was released by the Future of Life Institute on March 22nd, 2023. So this is 5 months after the release of ChatGPT, which called for a temporary pause to the development and deployment of advanced AI systems. And the main purpose of the letter was to draw attention to the potential risks posed by AI and to give time for humanity to collectively reflect on the ethical and social implications of AI, as well as to implement kind of effective regulations and safety mechanisms. And so the letter was endorsed by a number of individuals who make up the kind of who's who of the tech world. The list of signatories included Elon Musk of Tesla and SpaceX, Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple, Stuart Russell, a leading AI researcher and professor of computer science at UC Berkeley, and Noah Harari, historian and theorist of humanity and technology. And there were also signatures from experts in ethics, philosophy, and social sciences. And again, we can't spend a lot of time on the letter here, but if you have not already, I would recommend everyone go read the letter. But I've highlighted here a few passages which are relevant for our presentation today, and we'll briefly read through them together. So it says here that advanced AI could represent a profound change in the history of life on Earth and should be planned for and managed with commensurate care and resources. The next quote here, contemporary AI systems are now becoming human competitive at general tasks. And we must ask ourselves, should we let machines flood our information channels with propaganda and untruths? Should we automate away all of the jobs, including the fulfilling ones? Should we develop non-human minds that might eventually outnumber, outsmart, obsolete, and replace us? Should we risk loss of control of our civilization? Such decisions must not be delegated to unelected tech leaders. And then at the end here, it says, therefore, we all call on AI labs to immediately pause for at least 6 months the training of AI systems more powerful than ChatGPT. And so even though there is not the same sense of urgency, I would say, around these questions as when they were posed back in March of 2023, the questions being raised here are obviously very urgent questions that we should still be paying attention to. And I'd argue that the questions posed in the letter are even more urgent today than they were even a year ago, especially in our political economic context. And what I mean is in the context of increasing wealth inequality, of economic inflation, of a crisis of affordable housing, of declining living standards, and in the context of climate collapse. And so one of the key authors of the letter was Max Tegmark, who is co-founder of the Future of Life Institute, as well as professor of physics at MIT, where he conducts research on cosmology, quantum mechanics, and artificial intelligence. And his two most prominent concepts or ideas are the mathematical universe hypothesis, which posits that all physical reality is fundamentally mathematical, and the multiverse theory, which posits that our universe is just one of many universes that exist. But he's probably most well known for his 2017 book, shown here, Life 3.0, Being Human in the Age of Artificial Intelligence, which was really an attempt to examine the kind of potential impacts that artificial intelligence may have on the future of humanity and society. And in the book, Tegmark posited that there are 3 clear stages to the evolution of life, and that we are in the 3rd stage with the introduction of AI. And in very simple terms, Tegmark posits that there is life 1.0, that was biological evolution. And in biological evolution, it was biology that determined both the kind of hardware and software, or the body and behavior of living beings. Then there was life 2.0, cultural evolution, which allowed humans to redesign their software, learn new skills and knowledge, but not their hardware. We often refer to this as second nature, right? Things that are not natural, like teaching students how to draw, right? I call that second nature. And now we're entering what Tegmark would call life 3.0, and this is technological evolution, which will enable beings to redesign both their hardware and software, potentially leading to a kind of super intelligent AI. And so in this kind of 3rd stage, Tegmark anticipates a future, and a not so far off future, where humans will be able to kind of modify their physical forms through biological enhancements and kind of cybernetic augmentations, as well as the ability to kind of upgrade our cognitive processes and human consciousness. And so we're entering a stage of life where the boundaries between the natural and artificial begin to dissolve. There is no boundary between the two. And from this, the book, like the open letter, attempts to raise possible concerns having to do with the kind of economic impacts, possible safety and security issues, as well as broader problems related to ethics and philosophy. But I want to kind of situate this for us, right, in our kind of discipline and profession. So in a kind of effort to situate or to put AI in the context of architecture, I actually want to turn to Ollie Thomas, who is the design technology manager at BIG, Bjark Ingels Group. And notice that Ollie, and I have it here, was the former BIM specialist at BIG. Ollie's title actually changed in response to the kind of broader technological challenges being presented by AI, so that he is now the design technology manager. And at present, Ollie oversees experiments in how AI can basically enhance as well as be integrated into the design process. But I'm highlighting Ollie because what he does is he provides us with a kind of conceptual framework for understanding the potential impact of AI on architecture by reinterpreting Max Tegmark's 3 stages of life into what he calls 3 stages of architecture. And so for Ollie, there are 3 distinct stages in the technologically determined evolution of the architect. And so as stated here, and we are currently in the 3rd phase, but the first phase, architecture 1.0, was defined by hand drawing. And that's where we had hundreds of people on a floor plate drawing one building by hand. And then we transitioned into architecture 2.0, and that's the digital / CAD drawing architect. And that's where you had now only 10 to 15 people working on a drawing for one building. And he would claim that it was quicker, but not necessarily smarter. So we're in a digital kind of space. And then we're currently we're transitioning from architecture 2.0 to architecture 3.0, which is AI assisted drawing, where we'll be able to reduce that number down to 2 to 3 people working on a drawing for one building in collaboration with AI, in essence, from tool to collaborator. And that's the key shift that Ollie's identifying, and kind of that's the key shift that Tegmark identifies in life. What Ollie is claiming here is that in this final stage, which we've just entered, AI acts as a collaborator, right? And blurs the distinction between the architect and the technology, between architect and tool. And he also posits that there will be a proliferation of smaller and more diverse architectural practices, because now you only need a couple people to execute a building. And that the architect will be liberated from the drudgery of drawing and making, and free to collaborate with AI in designing and thinking. And so this is just a photo again showing that that would be, architect 1.0, right? So all these architects are drafting, working on the same building. So now we're going to reduce that down to possibly 2 individuals. And I have a quote here by Ollie, and I would say Ollie's view is a rather kind of optimistic view of what impacts AI may have on architecture. But he states that I'm actually more excited for them than when I was in their position, because they can spend more time thinking and adding value rather than being an internal junior architect where you're endlessly modeling or photoshopping or rendering. You can actually have time to do what we're actually good at, which is thinking, and less being like wizards at CAD or BIM or whatever. You must learn the thinking process. It's absolutely going to disrupt the industry. Do not make a mistake about it. The value of what we do as architects is still the thinking. And I think what's evident in this quote, if we pay attention to it, is that there is a lot of emphasis now being placed on the architect as a thinker or designer, as opposed to someone who just draws, right? And so I think as a way of kind of beginning to consider the possible impacts of AI on the discipline and profession of architecture, it probably seems a bit pedantic, I think, to look backwards to the 15th century Italian Renaissance for guidance. But I'd argue that it's actually at this precise moment that a kind of technological revolution occurred, which allowed for the architect as distinct from the master builder to emerge. And this is also often noted as the birth of the modern architect, or the architect as defined from the Italian Renaissance to the present. And it has its origins with Leon Battista Alberti, who's pictured here in this slide. Alberti is often credited with formalizing the rules of scaled orthographic drawing, scaled plan, section, and elevation drawing, which was a technological breakthrough which allowed architects to remove themselves from the building site and to communicate their ideas to builders across time and space. And here I'm including a couple quotes by Alberti that I think are relevant to thinking about how AI may impact the discipline and profession of architecture. So Alberti states here that, "For it is not a carpenter or a joiner that I thus rank with the greatest masters in other sciences, the manual operator being no more than an instrument to the architect. Him I call an architect, who by sure and wonderful art and method is able, both with thought and invention, to devise, and with execution to complete all those works," end quote. And then for the next quote, states that, quote, "The architect should be able to describe and demonstrate with clear reasoning the effects and designs of the building, both the whole and the parts, and how they relate to each other, to the whole. In this way, the architect acts more like a composer orchestrating the work rather than a laborer who merely executes the plans," end quote. And what is evident in these quotes is that Alberti wanted to make a distinction between the architect as a designer or a thinker, and the building as a builder, as an executor or maker. But to do this, to fulfill this, this distinction that Alberti is trying to make, to enable this shift to take place, he had to establish a set of drawing conventions that could support this transition. In other words, the technological innovation of scaled orthographic drawing had social consequences that served to establish a hard line between architects and builders, or between thinkers and makers, or maybe we could even say between bosses and workers. And this is the same divide that Ali is anticipating with the introduction of AI. And so we can elaborate this divide as follows. This is a divide between the architect builder, the thinker maker, the designer executor, the boss worker, theory and practice, episteme or know why, and techne know how, education and training. And then I put down here, maybe provocatively, and this is for us specifically, the distinction between university and community college. Oftentimes, I think we do really good at the latter. Maybe we're challenged with the former. I don't know. You know, there's a number of pressures that exert themselves in this way. But I think what Ali is talking about, or beginning to gesture towards, is that this divide with the introduction of AI is only going to become wider, right? And so to the question of computer knowledge, to the question of what are we teaching, right? I think that question very much has to take into consideration how AI is potentially going to impact and transform the discipline and profession, and how do we best prepare our students, right, for this change. And so to maybe begin addressing this question or thinking about it, I actually put the question to ChatGPT. I posed the question, given the evolving role of the architect and the changes in architecture due to AI, how can we best prepare our students to become future architects? And ChatGPT responded with 10 points that I think it's worth kind of just briefly rehearsing here. I think they're worth reflecting on as all of us kind of proceed forward and think about how we're preparing our students for this technological revolution. The first, it suggests that we focus on core architectural skills. So the first is fundamental design principles. So this is the first, this is the basis, right? And I think we all do this very well. And this says ensure a strong foundation in design principles, architectural theory, so not just the know-how, but the know-why, and spatial understanding. These timeless skills will remain essential despite technological advancements. And I think we can see that, we all know that there's a sense of kind of continuity throughout the history of architecture concerned with this, despite whatever the particular technological innovations of a particular time and context are, right? There are some things that are continuous. The second point it makes is technological proficiency. It says AI and computational design. So it says integrate courses on AI, machine learning, and computational design techniques into the curriculum. This will help students harness AI for generative design, optimization, and data analysis. So here we could see an emphasis on computation, machine learning, kind of processes of computing, which are being highlighted. The third, this is elaborating on technological proficiency. It says proficiency with advanced software, train students in using advanced design and modeling software such as BIM, CAD, and AI enhanced tools. Proficiency with these tools is essential for modern architectural practice. So no one has to be in fear here. We're still going to be using BIM, CAD, and other software for the foreseeable future, but it is suggesting that as a way of thinking about AI, we need to be tending to these skills as well. Interdisciplinary knowledge. So number 4, cross-disciplinary learning. Encourage students to gain knowledge in related fields such as computer science, engineering, and environmental science. A broad skill set will enable effective collaboration with professionals from various disciplines. Practical and hands-on experience. 5, real-world projects. Provide opportunities for students to work on real-world projects that utilize AI tools. Hands-on experience bridges the gap between theoretical knowledge and practical application. So this, again, bridging the gap of theory and practice, but engaging real-world kind of problems. Number 6, internships and industry partners. Facilitate internships and collaborations with firms at the forefront of AI and architecture. Direct industry exposure will prepare students for the evolving professional landscape. And so I think, again, looking at firms, people like Ali, who are currently engaging AI in practice, right? Critical and ethical thinking. So ethical considerations and social impact. So number 7, teach the ethical implications of AI in architecture, including data privacy, bias, and social impact. Students will be equipped to use AI responsibly and ethically. So I think, again, what we're being asked here is not just to assume that tools are neutral, but that there will be ethical considerations to be made. On continuous learning and adaptability, so number 8, lifelong learning promotes a culture of continuous learning and adaptability. Encourage students to stay updated with technological advancements, which is vital for career and longevity. Communication and collaboration skills. 9, effective communication. Develop strong communication skills to articulate complex AI-driven concepts and designs to clients and stakeholders. Clear communication is essential for bridging the gap between technical details and client needs. There is a term being a ChatGPT prompt whisperer. I think we need to develop a prompt whispering skills with our students, but this is an opportunity to really develop our communication skills. Number 10, team collaboration. Train students in collaborative tools and techniques for working in multidisciplinary teams. Effective collaboration will be essential in AI integrated projects, ensuring cohesive and comprehensive design solutions. There's a number of software that are built on collaborative models. So I think foregrounding those collaborative tools. Now I'm going to end the lecture here because again, this is meant more as a provocation, as a kind of way of framing some of the issues or the long shadow right now that's being cast by AI on all of us. But I want to end with a quote. So now I'm even going further back by Vitruvius, the 10 books on architecture from 3020 BC. The quote simply states that thus architects who strove to obtain practical manual skills but lacked an education have never been able to achieve an influence equal to the quality of their exertions. On the other hand, those who place their trust entirely in theory and in writing seems to have chased after a shadow, not something real. But those who have fully mastered both skills, armed, if you will, in full panoply, those architects have reached their goal more quickly and influentially, end quote. And so I think what this is calling our attention to is that as we kind of proceed forward, and hopefully this is coming through here in the lecture, is that not only do we need to pay attention to the technical skills, the kind of engaging students in the know-how of AI, but also the know-why, thinking about the deeper questions, right? The theory of these tools, and to consider the broader social implications, right? Not just to, and so approaching the education in the fullest sense. But I would argue that in thinking about how we think about computer knowledge today, it will be impossible in many ways to do that, to take that on in a meaningful way without placing that question in the context of AI, right? And so I think this is a time, a moment for us to kind of back up and kind of look at the bigger picture of where we are and how we are approaching issues of technical know-how within our classrooms.
Hello, everyone. We are back. Jeffrey wanted to add a few more things to our previous conversation. And as you'll notice, we have a new look. So a new look for a continual conversation on AI.
Yeah, great. So thank you for hosting me with this. I think the lecture, the talk I gave was primarily focused on, I think, the kind of history, what we would call the kind of history and theory of AI in architecture, and some speculations about where, what I guess impact AI may have on architecture. What I'm going to share today might be called the kind of practice of AI in architecture, and even more specifically, the kind of pedagogical practice, right? Because we're educators, and so we're primarily concerned with how we engage architecture as a medium of education. I think that's always kind of important to kind of frame it that way. And so AI can be a useful tool in that, maybe even a collaborator. And so we know that AI is here. We can imagine many of our students are engaging with it. It's going to have a profound impact on both the discipline and profession of architecture. All of that's very clear.
Yes.
What I've done, what I'm going to share today, is a very kind of basic kind of beginning exercise. It's really the first, I would say, assignment, if we want to call it an assignment, that I've developed that engages the student with AI. So it's an absolute beginning.
Okay.
Right? And the assignment is being developed in response to a course that I'm actively redesigning at this exact moment. So in our department, the way our studios have been structured, we have courses that tend to mirror what we would call studios in the university or college kind of environment in a four-year school. And so typically our students start first semester in what we would call a design studio that introduces them to basic principles of design, principles of composition, as well as the kind of basics of scaled orthographic representation, right? So the kind of tools of the architect. But we've kind of been reevaluating our curriculum and our courses, and we're also trying to deal with what we see as a kind of new typology of student post-COVID. And this is a student that we really feel like almost needs to learn how to be a student before we even launch into the studio. Like, so what we're doing with this first semester course is we're really kind of reconceptualizing it as a gateway course. We're calling it a gateway course.
Okay.
So it's leaning a lot less heavily on the tools and techniques, engaging them in that, as opposed to really just introducing them to the ideas. It's much more about kind of observation, developing kind of critical analysis skills, introducing students to research, developing terminology, vocabulary, even introducing students to certain digital technologies. I think for a long time, we overestimated, I think, the digital aptitude that students have, because we assume they're on their phones all day, that somehow they're native to technology. And we realize that that's kind of a oversimplification and error we find with our students, that it's very different to engage with an app on your phone than to understand file types and deal with file management. And so I think, you know, even that kind of stuff, like really kind of spending time, giving time to cover those subjects. So I'm kind of giving that as the context for this assignment. And it's the first of what will probably be multiple assignments that will be developed during the course of the semester. So, but this would be one that would come at the front, right? So again, that's the kind of order thing. So I'm going to pull up the assignment and share it here. It's both there's both the kind of in-class and out-of-class. So this is this would be an in-class exercise. Then there would be a kind of at-home second part to this. But what this exercise is basically doing, I won't read through the introduction, other than it's just kind of an introduction of AI. It's just basically just a kind of introductory paragraph. But what the assignment, if you go down to the objective and the instructions, what the assignment is aiming to do is primarily three things. It's aiming to introduce students to basic design vocabulary. That's one. The second thing it's doing is it's going to introduce students to the iterative design process. So the idea of iteration. It's something that we'd like to kind of reinforce with the students. And then the third thing it's going to try to do or aim to do is allow the students to recognize the value of the unexpected. And that will become clear as I kind of go through the exercise. So as for the assignment itself, if we go to the next page, essentially the students are being given a prompt. So this is a prompt. I imagine a blank, 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 made of blank. And you'll see below that prompt, there's a series of terms, vocabulary banks that the students are being asked to choose from. And you'll notice if you look under each of the blanks, there's a kind of term, and this is so the vocabulary is focusing on kind of four, I guess, principles. It's focusing on scale, form, typology, and material. So again, we're kind of really kind of focusing in on these four conditions. And for scale, you'll notice again, they have three options for sizes of buildings. Form, they can choose cube, cylinder, or pyramid. So these are the kind of platonic solids, the primary forms. For typology, they can choose house, church, or school. So again, these kind of basic typologies. And for material, brick, wood, or glass, right? So, and if you go down back to the instructions, so they're being asked to use that prompt. They're being directed to Google Slides. So Google Slides, and that's what I'm going to jump into here. Google Slides has built-in AI image generator. And the reason we're using Google Slides is, first and foremost, it's free. It's a very useful software that we can encourage students to share files and work on files together. That's another thing we really want to try to cultivate in the first semester, is that they can be working collaboratively. And it has this AI, which is about as easy and simple to use as it can be. So it's a good kind of starter without having to have the students get bogged down in the technical kind of aspects of the program. Now, eventually we would move into things like Procreate or things that are a little more sophisticated, but this would again be a kind of beginning. So we go back to the prompt. I just want to kind of slide this over so we can see it in Google Slides here. In Google Slides, there is this little icon here, and if you hover over it, it will say create image with Gemini. That's the image generating AI that's built into Google Slides. So I'm going to click on that, and then there will be space for a prompt, and I'm literally going to write in there the prompt here, and I'm going to plug in some of these terms. So I'm just going to say, I imagine a 1,000 square foot, I'm going to choose a cylinder, I'm going to choose a house, and made of brick. I'm going to hit create. It's going very slow. Then you'll see it will actually generate 1,000 square foot houses, cylindrical houses made of brick. So
Wow.
Choose one of these. There we go. There it is, right? And I can choose another one. Maybe I like this one better because I really didn't specify anything beyond those parameters. So, they're getting a little more adventurous with where they put the apertures and those kinds of things, right? I can change, maybe I want to change it to concrete. So I can, again, just change that prompt.
So is this created by AI, or do they find images? Does the AI find images that are, based off of your prompt?
You know what? I assume, but I should not assume, Manuel, because you're raising a good question. Now, I'm assuming that these are original images, that they're not just simply finding them. Because we can, make recommendations to change the image as well. And, so let me do that. Let's just to be, we'll go through all the material kind of iterations here. Let's do a glass. So let's see. Let's choose this one. So there's a glass. So this is what the students are kind of being asked to explore. So again, this kind of idea of design vocabulary, iteration, the value, recognizing the value of the unexpected. right? Because again, this idea that the AI can be a collaborator, that they can then give it feedback and kind of keep rewriting the prompt and kind of fine tuning, right? And so as a kind of conclusion to the assignment, the students are basically being asked to write a brief description of 3 of the images that they generate and choose. And in their descriptions, they're being asked to basically just describe exactly what they're seeing. They don't have to like get into theory and like it's literally like how would they describe this glass cylinder here? What is it sitting on? What is the how is the glass divided? What is the rhythm? You know, so again, just pure description. So again, they're articulating, they're in a kind of conversation, right? So that would be the first part. They would just kind of be exploring. We would be talking through it together. Now for the homework assignments, the homework assignment would very much kind of build on this, except for the homework, they would be asked to explore relationships of these volumes to the ground. So they would elaborate the prompt and they would explore something like above ground, coplanar with the ground, and embedded in the ground. And then from that, again, they would be asked to select 3 and then within 150 to 200 words, describe the differences that they see. Like how would they describe the differences between them? So again, we can kind of just briefly kind of explore that, like what kind of images do we get? So I'll just add here, of glass that sits, or I'll say that. So this will be a glass cylindrical volume that is above the ground. Now, it's going to be highly problematic. They're not concerned with gravity in this AI reality. So maybe we could stipulate a little bit, but we'll just hang on that for a moment. And then I'll say that is coplanar to the ground. One that is coplanar to the ground. So that's kind of, there we go. That's kind of interesting. I mean, suddenly that's a little different than the first one, right? That relationship to the ground. It's not quite on the first one. It looks like it's sitting on a plane that's sitting on the ground. This one, you can actually see it's almost as if the floor surface, you'll see there's a little indent, is almost coplanar with the ground. So we know that's a very different kind of condition, right? And so suddenly, I think having the opportunity to discuss that distinction with students. And then we'll look at one that is embedded in the ground. And of course, you know, we can add terminology to that list, and we can even ask the students to explore different terms, right? So again, really kind of attending to and being specific about the words they use. And in a way, this really kind of requires them to do that. That embedded in the ground doesn't seem, let me just say, I'm going to say, it's another term. It's under the ground. Let's just see how that comes up. Some of these terms I may actually have to go back and change. I think, again, what can be built into an assignment like this too is the possibility of giving some leeway to the student to define the terms too as they're writing their descriptions. And so we can kind of enter into a kind of almost like a feedback loop. So this one, so this is kind of what I wanted to give for Under the Ground. I don't know if that's the most successful image of that. Let's see, we can do the view more, see what else it comes up with Under the Ground. So we can see pretty quickly, I think we're confronted with some of the limitations. I mean, that's about as far as it wants to go with putting this thing in the ground, right? Now, I'm not saying we can't get closer to what we're looking for, but I think that's part of the purpose of an assignment like this too, is it requires of us, requires of the students to be very specific about the terms they use in a way to fine tune those terms to get the kind of desired result. But there's clearly a kind of feedback loop, because even as I'm doing this, I don't know what I'm going to get, right? And I'm responding to what I'm getting. And so but that's not unlike the design process itself. And so that's what we mean by the kind of iterative processes. Oftentimes we don't know what we're going to get. I think it's just being open and receptive to what's there and trying to enter into and engage in a dialogue with what's coming up, and to be articulate about describing the thing that we're engaging with, right? So much of the process of critique is just that. It's just being able to really describe in absolute precise terms what we're seeing, and the more kind of precision and depth we can assign to something. I mean, that's when we start to be able to even see it more clearly in a way, right? As opposed to just on the surface. And so this assignment, again, it's really trying to kind of build out those capacities, right? But it's pretty quick. It's like, and that could be an advantage here too. You can see that it's not focused on techniques of rendering and things which are extremely time consuming, and not that they're not valuable in and of themselves, they certainly are, but there's something about, especially in this first semester, the kind of speed of this and allowing the students to explore and get excited and to, again, develop ways of thinking about design. And certainly these kind of forums are going to challenge any ideas they had about what a building should look like. I mean, I think that's the other thing here, and that we always struggle with beginning design students, is they really come in with pretty preconceived notions about what a house should be or a school should be. And so I think part of this is already kind of undoing and challenging that. And so that's kind of a brief, I'd say, kind of summary description of this kind of introductory project. But that's it. That's what I have. Unless you have any kind of questions to that, I'm happy to kind of entertain those.
That's really interesting. And so after this, it's really just about the description.
Yeah, so that's how the project as it stands. And I'm not saying that next week, if we did this again, that it won't evolve a little bit. It probably will before the semester begins. But as it stands, like, yeah, they're part of this assignment would then be, you know, a kind of reflection, a description, a 150 to 200 word description of what it is they're looking at. So again, they have to kind of articulate and use words and describe the differences, right? And so that would be, you know, and we would probably use that as a launching pad for the next time we meet, right? So again, even that, it becomes iterative and we're building off of it and having a conversation.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And next time that people join us, we can tune into the conversation and get in a little bit deeper on what you found this project to be.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
A super big thanks to our guest, Jeffery Roberson, and thank you for joining our program. I would like to take this opportunity to invite you to our 2025 conference in Boston, Reimagining Architecture Education, Empowering the Next Generation of Students, taking place on June 6th through 7th. We've planned an exciting and engaging event, and we would love for you to join us. If you are not a member and wish to be a part of the conversation and the coalition, contact us. We are eager to hear from you. Until next time, enjoy life to the fullest.
You